We're going to start off with the NFL draft, the thing that everyone was tuning in, the real draft this week. And Tony Khan featured all over NFL programming, selling his TK driver that he took on Wednesday's edition of Dynamite. This was featured on Thursday night, where he seemed to be kind of the comedic foil, I would say, for some of the broadcast, where they were showing him in his neck brace and having a lot of fun with this. They were explaining how he was pile driven into the mat on Wednesday night, and it seemed to be like this was like this fun story coming out of Thursday night's draft, which was at least on ESPN was seen by an average of over 12 million viewers. It was a very successful number for them. And then today they decided, I guess, well, you know what? Here was this fun story. We got all these hours of draft coverage. Let's have Tony Khan on for a couple of minutes. He can talk about the Jaguars. We can talk about this wrestling angle. Be a fun interview. So let's hear a portion of this fun interview that they got to conduct with Tony Khan for some light fodder in between all the heavy football talk.
We are the most successful sports startup since the AFL pre-merger. There has not been a challenger brand that has gained as much market share as AEW in many, many, many years. We are like the Pepsi of pro wrestling, and we're up against a really evil juggernaut. WWE is our competitor. That's who we're facing. AEW, like the Pepsi of pro wrestling. WWE's like the Harvey Weinstein of pro wrestling. And I'm really proud of what we do down here.
So what you couldn't hear was the alarm bells inside of these two hosts' heads the second that, I would say, in almost any public situation, when you hear the name Harvey Weinstein, you are immediately, your back is up against the wall, which is kind of what I think these hosts felt at the moment. We're like, whoa, what are we stepping into here? This was supposed to be just a fun, silly wrestling interview, and it turned into this. And obviously this comment gaining a ton of traction, and it's one of those comments, where I think it's for the purposes of back and forth anger between fan bases. It is fuel for either side that can either look at this as a comment that is directed at a company that is under the midst of a sex trafficking lawsuit, or it is one that can be just, this is such a just like trivializing someone really, really heinous here in terms of just like a jab at your competitor, and you probably got just mountains of engagement as a result of this. Not to be lost on people, this is also coming at a time when the name Harvey Weinstein is back in the headlines after his 2020 rape conviction was just overturned on Thursday in New York. And now you're probably getting a lot of people that are tweeting about Harvey Weinstein with the letters WWE or the name Vince McMahon attached to that. I think that there's probably some of that thinking to it. I think that Tony absolutely leans into that kind of thought process here. Or are we giving too much credit here for what this was? And this was just a shot at WWE, and that's what he felt in the moment.
Yeah, I don't know how calculated this would have been. It maybe seemed to me more like a spur of the moment, top of mind type of thing for Tony. For one thing, Harvey Weinstein is not a competitor to Pepsi. Like, they're not even the same genre. So I don't understand maybe how that analogy works, other than, he was talking about evil corporations, and I suppose his mind directed himself to Harvey Weinstein. I think you're seeing a Tony Khan that is just kind of really looking for any attention towards AEW that he can get. And maybe, he's choosing to have fun with it. Like, I mean, this might have been his philosophy for promoting AEW the entire time. Clearly, like, even the Punk footage debate, to him, I'm sure, has at this point become a net positive simply because people are talking about AEW. So sure, he'll go on the NFL draft and sell his ankle in order to get an interview so he could promote his TV show. He'll say like pretty outrageous things, like calling the WWE the Harvey Weinstein of pro wrestling. And as long as he can get a headline and get some attention for himself and also for his pro wrestling company, he'll see it as a positive.
I think that's the case. I think people get into these debates about, is this good publicity or bad publicity? I don't think Tony Khan really has too much of a care of what kind of attention it is, as long as they're in the conversation and that the NFL Network is talking about an AEW angle that he is literally selling here as he is on here. I guess the question would be your takeaway here. And if, no, you can certainly state that this was a bad look for Tony Khan, but I don't think he really has that in mind. This is simply, here was a shot, and I'm sure he feels it's justified to fight fire with WWE. Like, that's what the game is. I think it more so just outlines the kind of lines we're going to see thrown back and forth between one another. I just think it's kind of gross, though, when you're getting into, sexual assault cases and such, and they're trivialized for just one-liners to be thrown at people. That's my personal opinion on it.
So I don't think Tony is good at this. Like, I think he's exactly as I think he presents, which is like socially awkward, kid who has found himself in a position where he has to speak publicly, and he's not really the quickest nor like I think the wittiest when it comes to like these sort of one-liners. And you get kind of like awkward things that might come out, like using Harvey Weinstein as an analogy in the same sentence as Pepsi. It's just what you get out of him. Again, I don't know how calculated this was on his behalf, but it does maybe call more to sort of like a general philosophy he seems to have now of just getting as much attention as possible for AEW, good or bad.
Yeah, I mean, the one thing you can state is that no one attached with AEW is getting on to a program like this other than Tony Khan because of the Jacksonville Jaguars connection. I guess your question is the... how did this broadcast feel about this interview that was designed to be probably just some lighthearted interview, and then you have this moment? Like, does this at all reflect badly on the Khan family, the Jacksonville Jaguars organization, that here is the owner's son that is doing his wrestling angles, and then he's invoking the name of Harvey Weinstein on this broadcast? That, I mean, you might not know anything about pro wrestling, and you hear that name, it's going to be very off-putting for people. Right. And the host seemed very uncomfortable as soon as that name was brought up here, and immediately moved to the next topic.
It's hard. I don't really, so I don't watch football, so I don't really know what the reputation of the Khans are as personalities heading into something like this. Like, did this simply, accentuate whatever was already there, or did it create a new persona for Tony Khan to a football audience? I don't know. Like, something tells me maybe even the broadcast for this NFL Network might have even enjoyed some of the attention that a clip
the
like
wrestling
this
stuff. Listen, it might look goofy and stuff. Like, the clips I saw, like on the NFL Network, even on Pat McAfee's show, like, everyone was having like, they thought this was really entertaining, that here he is selling this angle. And again, I think he got onto this show the next day because here was like this weird sub story out of the first night of the draft that let's have fun with. I thought it was like, this was a PR win for Tony Khan going with the neck brace, and I didn't think it would be taken seriously. And not that they were taking it seriously, but they had a lot of fun with it, and it was a net positive, I think, for people coming out of night one. And now sort of it's not the fun story. It's like it's at least I would say to the wrestling audience, they're hyper focused on this shot at WWE. Maybe the greater audience is not paying as much attention.
We're spending 10 minutes talking about it, so I guess to Tony this is probably overall a positive. I'm guessing for him.